So we will call the meeting to order of the Technical Coordinating Committee at approximately 2:36. Please give your attention to this short video. So we will call the meeting to order of the Technical Coordinating Committee at approximately
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Okay, thank you. Christina, could you please conduct roll call?
Yes, Member Armio? Member Boardman?
Here.
Member Chen?
Here.
Member Conradi? Member Diaz? Member Doe?
Here.
Member Greenblatt?
Here.
Member Knapp?
Here.
Member LeBeau? Member McLean? Member Nelson? Member Ortiz? Member Panganiban?
Here.
Member Reeves?
Here.
Member Rawani? Member Stamps?
Here.
Member Weeks?
Here.
Member Wirtz? Vice Chair Kursaban? And Chair Dillard.
Here.
We have a quorum. We can move forward with the meeting.
Excellent. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone wishing to speak during public comment on an item that is not part of the agenda? So please submit a public speaker card or raise your virtual hand, and staff or I will call upon you. Christina, do we have any written comment?
I've received no public comment.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes our public comment item. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Are there any changes or comments from the committee? Does anyone want to pull an item? No, seeing none, is there anyone wishing to speak during public comment on an item that is not part of the agenda? Please submit a speaker card or raise your hand. Do we have any written comments on the consent calendar?
We've received no written comments.
Okay. So a motion and a roll call vote will be taken after the last regular agenda item. So this concludes our consent calendar items. We now move on to regular agenda items. The first item is an informational item presented by Jay Zhang to provide an update on upcoming obligation deadlines for federal aid projects, state transportation improvement program projects, active transportation program projects, status of projects placed on the Federal Highway Administration quarterly inactive lists. Mr. Zhang.
Thank you, Chair Dillard. Good afternoon, Chair Dillard and committee members. I just want to take this opportunity to do a self-introduction since I'm new here. My name is Jay Zhang. I'm an associate engineer with CCTA. I've met a couple of you online, but this is the first time I see you in person, so that's very nice. I've been here for a little over a month. Before coming to the TA, I was a civil engineer with the City of Oakland for 5.5 years, and before that, I was a private consulting engineer. Yeah, so please forgive me if I make any mistakes. I've only been here for a month, so. So this is a standing item to present the monitoring effort from the CCTA staff on various state and federal funding. So let me share my screen. The first attachment A of this item is the STIP funding program. No significant issues to report this time on these projects. We have one project from Concord that they have an extension for allocation for June 2024. Another note on this item is that the 2024 STIP is currently on the agenda to be adopted at the March CDC meeting, which is happening today and tomorrow. So those changes will be reflected at the next TCC meeting. And next up, we have the OBAG 2 and OBAG 3 projects. Again, no significant issues to be reported here. We do have one project from City of San Pablo, the Giant Road Pavement Rehab Project. Due to staffing issues, they've missed the January obligation deadline, but they are actively working with MTC to see if they can program the funds in the next fiscal year. And if so, they plan to seek obligation in September of this year. Attachment C of this item is a list of ATP projects. Again, no significant issues. There are 2 projects that are seeking allocation extension, and then 1 project will be going on the May CDC meeting for allocation. And another related item for the ATP is the Cycle 7 call for projects is currently active. And there's a upcoming webinar on the Cycle 7 application tools on Wednesday, March 27th from 9:30 to 11:30. You can register on the CTC website. And the last attachment to this item is the Caltrans inactive list. Inactive project list. These are the projects that have not been invoiced to Caltrans for more than 6 months. So if you have a project on this list, we ask that you work with local assistance to either submit an invoice or provide justifications because these projects will be at risk to lose funding. And that concludes this item. This is an information item only. so we're not seeking any actions. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Jay. Are there any comments from the committee? Anyone from the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none. Christina, do we have any written public comment?
We've received no written public comment.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda, it's an informational item. It will be presented by Matt Kelly for input on the proposed work plan for the 22-26 cycle of Contra Costa community-based transportation plans. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Chair Dillard. Let me see if I can turn the camera on here. Control, oh, they're over here. Okay, let's get myself on camera. Yes. And I have a presentation somewhere. Let's see. Is that here? Okay. How do I get to the media? Will be just a moment. Actually, I'll start talking. So I'm Matt Kelly, Senior Transportation Planner here with the Authority. It's great to have everybody here back in person. Today I'm here to talk about the community-based transportation plans. If you're new, say since 2020 or so to the county, you may not have participated in community-based transportation plans before, so I'm going to provide you a little overview. And it may say informational item in the packet, but we're really looking for your feedback on our proposed work plan, or really to help us with our proposed work plan that we take to our board next month. So we've kind of laid out some options that I'll get to at the end. And I'll start off with some overview of the community-based transportation plans. And thank you, Tarian. Community-based transportation plans are funded by, at the regional level, by MTC, and each CMA, Congestion Management Agency around the Bay Area, is tasked with conducting those plans, and then the locals are wherever the plans take place are generally the ones tasked with implementing the plans. So the real goals are to improve local access and mobility for underserved areas and historically marginalized populations. That includes people with low incomes, communities of color, and really focused in the MTC identified equity priority communities. You may remember in the past we did community-based transportation plans on the geographies known at the time as communities of concern. With the adoption of the current RTP, Plan Bay Area 2050, they're now called equity priority communities, and they include some different geographies based on some different criteria. And I'll get into that in a minute. But so the other main goal of the CBTPs is really to engage those communities directly, and including community-based organizations, and sometimes going through community-based organizations in kind of analyzing the needs and shaping recommendations for how to solve those needs and challenges that are identified by the community. So it's not meant for staff or for the consultants to come in and identify what they perceive to be the problem in these, or the challenges for transportation in these areas. It's really supposed to be community identified. So the history of CBTPs in Contra Costa, we started with the first round back in the mid-2000s. At the time we did a Bay Point plan, a monument corridor plan over here in Concord, downtown Martinez, and Richmond area. Those were all done kind of under the first round between 2004 and 2009. Then under OBAG 2, we received funding for around between around 2017 and 2021. And at that time, we updated all of our plans. However, we significantly expanded the geography and scope of some of them, especially in East County. We expanded the Bay Point plan to include most of Pittsburgh and parts of Antioch, kind of western Antioch. The Monument Corridor was updated, and along with downtown Martinez, those geographies stayed the same. And then we expanded the Richmond CBTP to include areas of kind of western El Cerrito, southern San Pablo, and unincorporated parts of Contra Costa County like Terra Hills and Montalvan Manor. So this new CBTP cycle, which is funded through 2026 by MTC and is funded this time around by OBAG 3 funds and REAP 2.0, and REAP stands for Regional, oh gosh, something advanced programs or projects. Anyway, they're funding kind of the outreach component, some of the outreach component of the CBTVs, but as with past, it comes mainly from OBAG funds. Regional Early Action Planning, yes, thank you, Stephanie. And so for this round, there's $3 million allocated to go around the Bay Area. The low-income population definition is that of less than 200% of the federal poverty level. As I had mentioned earlier, these locations, these EPCs, were identified under Plan Bay Area's framework. We have been allocated $450,000 for our EPCs, which is 15% share of that $3 million. And there's, if you're doing your math, there was a chunk taken off the top to do follow-up studies by MTC. So we got 15% of the region. I think technically we had about 16% of the actual population. So we did fine by MTC standards. And a 10% local match is required. That includes in-kind staff time, both CCTA and local staff. The plans must be completed by 2026, so it's use it by then or lose it. And MTC's, sorry, this all comes from MTC's guidance that they put out with each round. They state that priority for new or updated plans should be given to newly identified EPC areas and plans that are more than 5 years old. As you saw from that earlier slide, all of our previous plans were adopted in either February 2020 or early 2021, I believe. And so before I get into the new locations, based on that timing, those plans were either done before the pandemic or completed during the pandemic. So all of the data collection for it and all the outreach and interviews and work with the public was all done prior to the pandemic. So if we're looking at, areas we should update, that may be rationale for updating the plans again in making sure we're getting the latest data or information. Though, I'm not sure if folks have looked at the plans, but if you look at them, I think a lot of the issues that are identified and the recommendations are kind of appropriate pre and post-pandemic, but, I don't want to make that call. I think it's, we want your feedback on if you think that's should be criteria and whether we we update the plans and not just focus on the new areas. But in terms of the new areas, I don't know how well you can see this map. So you can, at the bottom edge in the pink, you can see what we did last time around in the 2021 plan. And then this splotch of orange that covers Rodeo mostly, and maybe a little bit of Crockett, all county unincorporated, is a brand new location. So that's one we want strongly considered, or MTC wants strongly considered for inclusion this time around. The other new chunk is, we'll call it East Antioch and say Western Oakley, or I don't know, Central Oakley, and with some donut holes in the middle. You can see from the pink shading to the left is where the last plan left off. So now we get to the discussion. And just for reference, there is a map of all of the areas, a countywide map in your packet, for reference. So our questions today for you to help us kind of fine-tune our work plan are, so I'll just go through the questions now, and then I'll let you guys kind of just start weighing in on what you think. So kind of 5 main subject areas. Location, do we focus on developing plans for those, really 2 new areas? Or are there compelling reasons to include the areas updated in the previous cycle? Like I mentioned, those were all done in 2020, 2021, within 5 years, but by the time we complete them, it'll probably be about 5 years. Like I said, done pre-pandemic. The scale, so this time in the guidance, MTC has given us the option. We've always done individual plans in the past. So, there's the downtown Martinez CBTP. It's a standalone plan. Each is standalone and sometimes done by a separate consultant. So they've given us the option of doing a countywide CBTP, which would presumably kind of include all of the potential areas or all the candidate areas, and would be done presumably by a single consultant under one report. Administration of the CBTP, this time around, MTC has given us the option of passing the funding directly to the local agency. It's in our case, well, in 2 of the cases, it would be one, single jurisdiction, and in 2 of the cases, it's multiple jurisdictions. So, we'd like you to weigh in on that if you think one, local jurisdictions would be up for the funding going directly to them, and more importantly, would they be up for managing the process themselves, because that's what it would entail. CCTA has always administered these on behalf of the local agencies. Sometimes in the past, it's as sometimes we don't even get participation from city staff. We like it, the keys to a meeting room, and that's it. Sometimes we get full participation from staff. It just depends on the local agency, but that's something to consider. And just so you know, well, I think I mentioned this. CCTA has administered this for both past rounds, so we're used to doing it, but we want to leave it open. Outreach. So also this time, MTC has made local community-based organizations the compensation for their participation, their direct participation. So like if they're helping facilitate a meeting, hosting a meeting, providing food for attendees, that kind of thing, that they could be compensated as part of this. We've always worked through CBOs, but we've never been able to compensate them. So their participation is really important. And so, we want you to weigh in on whether, the level of their involvement you think is appropriate, and the level of, compensation that we provide with them, if you think that in general is an appropriate action for the, for the way for the funds to be spent. And then in terms of budget, I know this is kind of a, you know, difficult question for you guys to answer, but do we need to supplement the budget to accomplish these updates? We think the 450 would probably cover a countywide plan. If we had to do 3 individuals, it might be tight. But you know, based on, I think CCTA can probably make a call on that last question based on the feedback we get on the first 4. So, yeah, I'm going to stop talking and open it up. One, if you have any, let's start if there are any like background questions on CBTPs that I can answer. Leah?
Thank you. I'm wondering what this can fund.
Oh,
Like, what are the components of the plan that can be funded? Like, you know, can we advance our past plan somehow with the MTC funds?
Yeah, so great question, Leah. So in the past, the CBTP recommendations, the recommended projects, actions, et cetera, have been funded directly by the Lifeline program, the LTP. That has kind of either gone away or been replaced by the REAP program. So there is funding that is made available, I believe, every 2 years for funding implementation of the CBTPs. So that's something to keep in mind. I know the county has been successful in the past of using, you know, just naming the CBTPs in their grant applications, just naming that this project that they're seeking funding for was recommended in a CBTP. So there is you know, specified funding for projects in the CBTP, as well as, you know, it just helps your grant applications.
So that's not quite my
Oh,
question,
okay.
sorry. So, you know, I'm wondering, can we do like a monitoring report
Oh,
of what we did before? Or could we take a project from a recent CBTP and advance it a little bit through some additional design work? Can that be covered?
yes, the latter. I don't think we could kind of keep studying something, but it has to be to advance a project, like more on the design or funding the actual construction or implementation.
Because I just looked back at the Richmond area one, and you know, I don't know if it warrants doing a whole new update, but I'll
okay.
defer to the agency.
Sure.
But I don't know how much has actually been implemented.
So one of our first steps would be to put together a list of all the all the items that have been implemented since the last cycle. So we haven't done that yet.
Thanks.
And if there's no kind of general questions, feel free to dive into any of these questions out here. And I do want to acknowledge that I did reach out to the county earlier on, so I know they've been having some conversations about it. So if Jamar or
Thank you,
Jerry
Mr.
want to
Chair.
weigh in.
I won't go over what we already talked about, but just a quick question about MTC's process. Would they be open? Do you know, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. It's not fair to ask you for their opinion or interpretation, but some of these sites, because this has happened in previous cycles, seem not great selections for, a community-based transportation plan. This site in particular in central-ish, east-ish county, South Pittsburgh. I don't want to speak for my colleagues in the city of Pittsburgh, but this area or this large swath of land that they've identified is outside the urban limit line, and a third of it's a landfill. So I don't see how that could be great for these funds. I guess the question is MTC open to, just getting kind of like input from either CCTA from the local agencies, so that we can eliminate the step of, these maps they produced, one of these sites isn't going to work. work, or a couple of these sites isn't going to work. It happened in East County a couple of years ago too, or a couple cycles ago. So that's kind of just a general process question. One comment though is the Rodeo one. If I'm not mistaken, we got the San Pablo Avenue Complete Street Study out of the last version of that area plan. So I don't know what else we would have to gain. I know you mentioned looking at the implementation measures that were provided in a previous plan and seeing which ones have been implemented. I think the San Pablo Avenue Complete Streets Corridor project was a pretty major one, so I'm not sure what else we would have to update out of that plan. So I guess just offering that as, you know, I don't want to say eliminate an area, or maybe deprioritize an area if we want to focus those funds in other parts of the county that might need them more.
Thanks, Jamar. So I did reach out to MTC regarding that kind of South Pittsburgh area, because in looking at the map further, I noticed it went all the way into Concord and included a neighborhood across the street from the Concord Pavilion. I'm not sure if that's in the city, but it's you know, there's a population there. And MTC just last week told me to, because I said, do we need to prepare a plan that covers this entire corridor, including this part of Concord that is very different from Pittsburgh? So they said only to include the Pittsburgh part, and there's about 5,000 homes in that chunk that we were looking at, which was more than I thought. So, I mean, I think it fits in with the rest of the kind of Pittsburgh, Bay Point, Antioch area. If we were to do that, we would just focus really on those areas and not go south of the city limits. And then that's good feedback on Rodeo. Yeah, we would want the county's full support and buy-off if that was one of our proposed locations. So.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I have a hard time deciding whether or not we should be updating the plans or doing some more on design development without knowing the status of the projects that were included in the prior plans. So, you know, if nothing's been advanced and those are still valid projects, then I'd want to see the effort go towards design or other things that might be needed. You know, can we do it in two parts somehow and decide? Or like even, I guess the other thing is, right now in West County, we're working on developing a transportation plan for the Richmond Parkway. And as we go out with these, for these neighborhood community meetings, what the feedback that we're getting is, you know, people have a lot of planning fatigue and they want to see something not in a plan, they want to see something advanced. And, you know, I would like to see an emphasis on moving these towards implementation if the projects are still worthwhile.
So you think if we had information on what's been implemented since the last plan, that would help you determine the locations to update this time around, or the?
Well, I guess I don't really want to update
Oh,
the
okay.
plans. I'd rather like select if we can do some analysis and see if these projects still seem worthy,
Yeah.
instead of updating a plan and listing the same projects another time, I'd rather try to prioritize the projects that are in the plan and see if it, you know, hire a consultant to advance some design so we can apply for grants to implement the projects.
As part of the CT, I mean,
Well, that was my original question.
can
is
we
like,
get funding to do that as opposed to updating plans? Or-
Well, what does plan update mean? Like, can it be broad and include, design development? Or whatever these projects might need to move forward. I just don't want to see the same projects listed again and again and again and nothing happening.
No, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know that, yeah, I think the money, to get the money, we have to, I believe, update a plan, but I can talk to MTC staff and see if there's any flexibility there.
Before I provide any feedback on behalf of my agency, I did want to ask a question, which is, because one of the questions being asked is, do we want to stick with these individual plans versus move to a countywide plan?
Right.
What would kind of, if we did move to a countywide plan, what would that come at the expense of? Or like, to what degree, really, would that come at the expense of detail or the ability to focus on more specific and local projects? Because I think our support of a transition like that would be dependent on sort of the ability to retain having some more detail.
Yeah, MTC hasn't really given us much detail on what that, like, what is the difference between having individual CBTPs and a countywide one. So I think they're leaving it up to the CMAs to kind of determine what that looks like. And in our kind of vision of that, it's in at least my vision, it's really doing the same thing just under one cover and one consultant. So still covering the same exact geographies, still doing the same level of outreach, but things may be a little more. You could probably have some streamlined, ways of doing things since you're doing kind of the same exercise in all parts of the county, but it would, or in 3 parts of the county, but it would need still the consultant who's doing it would need to tailor each area, outreach and so forth. But yeah, I really just see it as kind of a more efficient version of doing what we've done in the past.
Thank you.
And I will just say, last time around, we did 4 CBTPs, and we had 2 consultants doing 2 each, and they were on, each 2 were completed at the same time, but they weren't all on the same track.
Good afternoon. I did have kind of a follow-on question, maybe that helps the discussion or what Leah was thinking. I know in Richmond that our council has been discussing awful lot about planning and updating without actual implementation. So I know that's been a concern from our community. So perhaps, maybe it's, and I'm a relative newcomer to this process, so forgive, my not understanding this plan very well, but perhaps part of the update is discussion or guidance to help communities implement projects. So maybe that's helpful to what Leah was saying.
That's good. I will pose that to MTC, see if that is an eligible approach.
Matt, I had a question. So on the new, the EPCs that have been newly identified, has Transplan or WICTAC weighed in on this as far as their desire to embark on studies for those new areas?
No, we didn't want to reach out to all the communities till we kind of had some, kind of the overall approach be vetted. We didn't want to get people's hopes up or vice versa, however they feel about a CBTP. So, but yeah, basically what we would like to do is take a recommendation to our board next month, but, if the recommendation from you guys is to go back and provide a little more information, talk to MTC, and then come back with a kind of a refined proposal, we're fine doing that.
Hi, Matt. Just a question for you. I mean, I think it would be important to reach out to those communities with the new CBTP locations.
Okay,
To
just-
see if they're interested in pursuing a plan.
Okay,
And just to get their input and report back.
okay,
Because like, in terms of planning burnout, if we already have plans for the other areas, but these other areas are in need of that planning effort, then that would be something to, to prioritize.
okay.
I guess along the same token, some of your question asked if they want to manage it, so it seems like without their feedback, if they want to take on these new tasks, might be, the last thing I would want is to put on them and when they don't want to take on these tasks, or vice versa, they really want to be involved, and then we, take that away from them. So it seems like some outreach to these impacted agency might be helpful in making our decision. And then same thing with updating the old plan. If these jurisdictions don't feel like their plan needs to be updated, that might be a good information for us to have. Then maybe we do lean toward the newer plan. So I guess for me, it's outreaching to all the impacted agency will be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead,
I
Chris.
just want to jump in real fast. I'm just trying to think of a way that we could do this that would get all of us what we're looking for. So sorry if this is
I'm all ears.
a little weird, but maybe there's a way to look at doing an update process for the existing CBTPs that just kind of is not an in-depth update, but just kind of looks at them, acknowledges what's been done, and then updates what's been completed, and then how much needs to get done. So that those communities get that acknowledgement. And then moving forward, do a separate exercise where you do embrace those two new groups. And if there is a place when you're doing the existing update that they're in proximity to these two new ones, include an acknowledgement of that proximity somehow. So just include that in the update. Just say, yeah, there's a new area that's going to be included here, and this is how you plug them together.
Okay.
And then maybe that update is basically a county-wide approach, and the two individual ones are local, something like that. And maybe that gets the community the acknowledgement of what's been done so far, and it isn't like a planning fatigue thing where you're doing a lot of outreach. You're just looking at what's been completed on the roadways or what's been completed in the communities, and just acknowledging what's been done and needs to get done. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay, just an idea.
Yeah, and one thing I was going to say is that, the reason we didn't reach out ahead of time is because, last time around, like I mentioned, we had trouble getting the participation of some of the jurisdictions, just, I think, for lack of resources, and we didn't want to just have folks turn it down just because they say, oh, well, we don't have anyone to work on this. We want to make sure that if there's a need for these plans to be done, we're providing the resources. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I have one last question, Matt. Do you know the cumulative cost of the last 4 updates that were completed?
It was right around 450. They were, each team spent $225, I think, on 2 updates, and each did 2.
So it seems like much larger area, well, those are updates too, so not as much resource intensive, but potentially you could do a hybrid of both, because these new EPCs don't look like very
Right, they're pretty small.
large areas. So.
Our agency's perspective would definitely be that we would want to see the newer EPCs prioritized, partly because whereas the previous areas have already had a certain level of investment, the new ones are, you know, just as disadvantaged and haven't had that investment, haven't had that outreach, so it makes sense that we would want to prioritize them. I know in Rodeo, in particular, it's not adjacent to any existing of these EPCs, and I know that we've been in contact at WestCat with folks in Rodeo who are motivated to work on transportation issues. So, yeah, my plug would just be definitely prioritize Rodeo. That's something we want to see.
Okay. Any,
Can I just have one point of clarification
Yeah.
on the map? Is Point Pinole included in the Pinole plan? Because it's such an exciting new area to access by foot and bike, and the bike access is starting to get built there, and I go there and love it, and there's some places that need some attention and connecting it to some other plans that are going through that area. So I just want to see if it's all included.
it's off the edge of the map, but I do think it's probably part of the existing, or the one we did last time.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. Any feedback on the CBO involvement? In general, is that something you support, and compensation of them? You know, folks like Monument Impact were very important, or, you know, helped us lead a lot of the outreach in the Monument Corridor. Folks like GRIP and others who, you know, feed the hungry in Richmond were, you know, big participators last time. So any feedback there? Okay.
I think it's very worthwhile, and, you know, how it's appropriate to compensate these organizations for their efforts and participation in the process. So I'm happy to see that. That's a great improvement.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, just real quick. Yes, definitely on the CBOs. The county's been trying to build our relationships with CBOs for future grant applications. So if we can get those relationships built through other processes, so that if later on we need to reach out to them for their investment in these projects, all the better. So definitely.
Great. Do you guys mind if I try and capture what we've discussed? Well, there's Chris's proposal that I guess could stand alone, but also what I've heard is that we should, before a decision is made, we should compile a list of the projects implemented from last time. We should reach out to the communities to gauge their interest. And I think those were the two action items. And then the alternative, I think we've heard pretty good feedback on the scale, that I think a countywide one is appropriate because it would capture everything, unless I heard wrong there. And that we should focus on the new areas, but that we could do a version that would be, you know, a countywide version that would really focus the public outreach and the full CBTP treatment on the new areas, and do a refresh or update on the areas updated a few years ago. That's kind of two different things. I'm fine doing that initial step and coming back to you guys with an update on that. I'll let you guys decide what your recommendation is.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to get some feedback from MTC about implementation.
That was my other action item. Okay, thanks.
Any further comments from the committee? All right, good discussion. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We've received no public comment.
Okay. have what you need, Matt?
I believe so. We were going to take this to our planning committee in April. I'm just, I'm thinking aloud right now if we should just wait till we've come back to you guys, hopefully next month. Yeah. We'll probably do that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Matt. Okay, so now we need a motion and roll call vote to approve the following consent items. Item 3 on the consent calendar. Do I have a motion? Okay, a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first by Member Armio and a second by Member Weeks. Christina, can you please call a roll call vote?
Yes. Member Armio?
Yes.
Member Boardman?
Yes.
Member Chen?
Yes.
Member Doe?
Yes.
Member Greenblatt?
Yes.
Member Knapp?
Yes.
Member LaBeau?
Yes.
Member Ortiz?
Yes.
Member Panganaban?
Yes.
Member Reeves?
Yes.
Member Stamps?
Yes.
Member Weeks?
Yes.
Member Wertz?
Yes.
And Chair Dillard?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously with the members that are present.
Thanks. So this brings us to other business. Is there any other items to discuss? Don't see any. This leads us to adjournment. So our next regular meeting is April 18th at 2:30 p.m. And that concludes our meeting at approximately 3:30. So thank you, everyone.